I had another question about, you touched on it a little bit earlier, anemia and, but maybe like talk about
Oh,
heavy menstrual
yes,
cycles
yes.
and
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that's forgotten too. That's why iron becomes such an important, and eating foods with iron in it, your leafy green vegetables, things like that.
Grass-fed
But
meats.
we want to, especially menstruating. There's a lot of people, and there's some pretty decent data around menstruating women should all just be on iron, or
Mhm.
at least during the time that you're menstruating, about 30 milligrams of elemental iron is what you're looking at. We like the iron bisglycinate because it just absorbs so nicely, and you
And we
don't have
got less reports of stomach upset,
right.
less reports of constipation, and it was iron bisglycinate.
Right, right. That's the one I love too. That 30 milligrams at least of elemental, and you can take that during your menstrual cycle. That works well. You can, and in that, it's a time where you start to lose your menstrual cycle. You still have to remember that you still need oxygen and you still need iron, and with that, we need our folate. Right, so we would be folate and iron, and again, our vitamin D. The nutrient supplements are going to be, if we can't eat it, you're going to have to supplement with it.
Right.
And touching on that, if you could kind of go over the differences between folic acid, folate, and folinic acid.
So they're different forms of
And vitamin B9.
right, vitamin B9. They're different forms, and it has to do with their availability or their bioavailability. So we know that the folic acid, for many of us, at least 25, we think, percent or more of the population. And I think that's really I think that's really
Yeah, I read,
underestimated.
we actually, when we were doing some research for the book, we found studies as
high
low
as
as 44 and as high
as
as
60.
60%.
Right, right. That
the
you see those.
population
It's
For
definitely
MTHFR.
cannot process
they just
folic
can't.
acid.
They just can't process. And honestly, even for those that that can, it's still just extra work.
Yeah.
Right, it's extra work on the body.
Right.
We can't have enough. We got to do.
So I remember sending you both an article that I read. It was on the CDC website. And in the same article, and I actually love to
remember
re-find
this.
this. In the same article, it admitted that people with MTHFR gene mutation cannot process folic acid, and it would be better for them to just take 5-methylfolate. But in the same article, it then said,
True story.
but if you're pregnant or nursing, then you should, even with an MTHFR gene break, take folic acid instead of folate. Why in the world would they say that?
Right. So
why not just recommend
I think
folate?
anybody out here with common sense is going, what? But it's what the studies it's what the studies have been done on. Studies have been done on folic acid. There's quite a bit out there for the benefit that occurs in pregnancy if you have, but it's folate.
Yeah.
Right.
At the end of the day, they really talk
right.
about folate. It's just
The
whether or not your
studies have
body.
not really been done
Yeah.
on methylated
Yeah.
B9, and so I think they just kind of copped out there a little.
I get a lot of people that fight us on the folic acid thing, like especially, and I hate to say this, but my nurses, friends of ours, your daughter and son are both in nursing school, and they just push heavily on the folic acid thing. And we all just kind of laugh. And she literally has to, Madison will take a test, and she knows she has to answer
just to
how,
rethink it.
Yeah.
Right.
She has
right.
to answer it how they want her to answer
But
it.
look at the
not how
cost
she
difference
would want
in
to. Exactly.
folic acid and folate. Look at especially in the traditional model. It's all the studies are based on that. It's, and I think that needs to change. I think it is changing.
I think so too.
I think that it makes sense if I have to do the extra job to activate something. And geez, I might not even have the ability to do that very well. Maybe I'm
Right.
only 40% or
So in other words, take the methylfolate
right.
rather than the folic
and
acid.
it's so easy. It's so easy to do.
It's getting easier and easier. It was hard to find methylated multivitamins.
That was
and
a big
I remember
issue.
when we first started 8 years ago,
Right.
we couldn't find it anywhere. Even
Right.
when we went to manufacture our own vitamin,
They tried to push.
they really did. The manufacturer really pushed us to not use it. And he said, I can get cyanocobalamin so much cheaper. It's so much more bioavailable. It'll lower your per capsule cost. I can get folic acid.
That's what everybody else is doing. That's what they told us. And we're like, yeah, that's precisely why we don't want to use it.
Exactly. Now there's lots of good brands that have methylated folate and don't have the cyanocobalamin. They have the methylcobalamin.
But we've also had patients that when we go through their medicine cabinets and they have an MTHFR gene break and some of the other ones too. I've been shocked that literally we had a patient who was prescribed a pharmaceutical prescription grade
Folic acid and cyanocobalamin.
folic acid cyanocobalamin combo. I'm like, no wonder you're nuts.
And she would take it in the morning, and she had to take Xanax or Valium by the afternoon because her anxiety was so rampant.
Through the roof.
And
Sad.
the recommendation was just to get off
Just
that.
hate to think about it, but I did it for years in my early training. I knew we needed B vitamins. I knew they were missing. I just didn't have the knowledge base or the experience. And when we got into this gene testing and this methylation, especially if you have several breaks, or you have
You're a crazy woman.
influence from both parents coming at you, it's just night and day difference.